Mocha family. I am back today because I want to talk more in depth about a comment I made in the comment section of my fall fail to spring success video, where we were talking about some of the challenges of homeschooling, and I made a comment about finding ways to think outside of the box, and the person asked me to elaborate on that, and I thought it would be easier to do that in a video. And all I really meant by that is, I know that when I was first starting to homeschool, one of the greatest pieces of advice I received was not to try to make my school kind of like recreating a miniature public school or a miniature private school in my house. Because the beauty of homeschooling, one of the advantages of homeschooling, can be the fact that we have more flexibility and we're not limited to any kind of block of day. And so I embrace a lifestyle of learning so that learning can happen at any time during the day or with anything that we're doing. And I've seen lots of jokes and cartoon memes and things like that, where people are saying things like, we went to the grocery store, that counts for an agricultural study because we were in the vegetable aisle. I'm not trying to get silly with it like that, even though do you, but for me, I just opened up my mind, because when you get the curriculum, a lot of times if it's a schedule that's in front of you, it can kind of seem like you need to get everything in that schedule done during the structured time that you're doing school. And a lot of times that can be really, really challenging. A good example of that for me was when we had babies and they had naps. It was a whole lot easier to work with the older kids that needed my undivided attention and quiet, focused work when the baby was sleeping. So if the baby was taking a nap, at 11 o'clock in the morning, or gosh, it's been such a long time, probably more like 10 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, I don't remember what the nap schedule was like. It just made more sense to structure things around when the baby was sleeping so that I could get things done. I remember whenever we had read-alouds, that would happen over lunch, because I noticed that I spent a lot less time yelling at my kids and telling them to be quiet and not to make faces at each other and to pay attention to what I was reading if they were already occupied doing something, shoveling food, into their mouths, or, if it happened that we had even more reading to do than we could accomplish during lunch, I'd have them coloring something or painting something or cutting something, anything to keep them focused on something else with their hands so that they could hear what I was saying during the read-alouds. A lot of reading happened at bedtime as a bedtime story, and over the years, as I've had more and more kids to read aloud to, and not necessarily as much time and energy to do it for each and every kid, I've looked for books on tape, LibriVox, anything where it's the same book, it's still being read, but maybe not by me. Sometimes I outsource things. I'm not a very crafty person in the sense that I like doing crafts by myself, but I really struggle to let my kids cut their circle into the shape of a square when it's supposed to be a circle and not take over, and it just becomes a tense situation for both of us. And so we participate in a Bible study where they're off in their class, and during that time they do a lot of crafts. So I'll never forget the relief that I felt when I just allowed that to be the predominant crafting time for them. Since I, for some reason, felt like crafting had to happen or else my kids would be deprived. But it didn't have to happen with me doing it, and I didn't necessarily have to pay loads and loads of money for a professional to teach them an art class. I still feel like they're getting some of their artistic juices flowing by having that craft time at that Bible study that I attend. And so just really realizing that everything doesn't have to be me, everything doesn't have to be in a set time. The other day, and it's so funny how once you start thinking that way, things just sort of naturally happen. For some reason, when I was in Walmart the other day, I decided to pick up a president puzzle. And not even really thinking about, wow, you know, Donald Trump is going to be inaugurated. This is a time where we should be talking about all the different presidents, and this might be a good civics lesson opportunity. But I wasn't even really thinking that, but I picked up the puzzle, we did the puzzle. The puzzle had all the faces of the different presidents all the way up until Obama, and then a conversation could take place about who the next president is going to be. It's a 1,000-piece puzzle. We sat and we did it, and it was perfect. It fit perfectly with what we were doing. But that's a good example of doing something that's not technically school, but you're getting a history lesson in there nonetheless. So those are basically the kinds of things that I do to not limit myself when I'm working with my kids. Let me know in the comments down below if you have more ideas or if there are things that you do to think outside of the box. Be blessed.